Hey, everybody, welcome back to this live episode of Think Business with Michael Berris, who happens to be my baby cousin, but also happens to be the lead sales lead. He leads the sales operations team for extended retail division at Quicken Loans and oversees 27 people and the technology needs for over 500 people at Quicken. Michael, I'm excited to talk to you about just you and what you're doing over at Quicken Loans. I know you've been doing amazing things. I think you've been there over 15 years and have worn a lot of hats and done a lot of really incredible things. But I want to talk about, because as we're sitting here now, it's July 13th. COVID has hit. It's been the last few months of working for many companies. I know specifically Quicken remotely and working home. And so I really want to start off by talking about managing people remotely. And I know, many companies overnight had to move to a remote way of managing people. I think managing people in general is one of the hardest things that anybody has to do. And then you layer in a crisis, and then you layer in remote inspiration on a daily basis and getting people and holding them accountable while still nurturing and taking care of themselves. How have you adapted to managing 27 people?
It's a great question, and thanks again for having me on the show, Jonathan.
Yeah,
long-time listener. So
thank you, Michael.
It's been really interesting, coming from working in an office now for 15 years, almost every single day. I was personally very apprehensive of work from home for my entire career. I didn't think we could be as efficient. I didn't think you'd get as much done. I thought in my mind that laziness would set in because of a few random scenarios that have happened over my career. And what I learned really opened my eyes. It changed my thought of the whole thing, because you can inspire, you can lead, and you can make people feel good to execute remotely or in the office. Just the same, you just have to change your habits and the way you go about things. We've really embraced AV conferencing, whether you're using Teams or Zoom, and making sure that you're not forgetting that people are what move the business forward. So as an example, we do a happy hour every single week where we get the team together and we play some type of game online, whether it's something simple like bingo. You can have fun, and you can give out some simple prizes like providing lunch for the whole family, the whole household. And it gets people engaged while also still allowing you to have your day-to-day execution of the production. That's, of course, super important, without missing that social interaction by layering in the technology.
Yeah, I love that. I want to talk about habits, because you're talking about changing habits, and I appreciate you talking about how you thought laziness would set in and you were apprehensive about it. I think I as a business coach, I'm working with companies all over the country and some internationally as well, and they've been trying for years to try to figure out how to work remotely. So that with the same apprehensions that you have along with others. But now that it's happened, changing habits isn't always the easiest thing. So how have you worked with your team for you and for them to change your habits? And what are some of those changes?
It's a great question. Coming back into, I'd actually been out of the office just before the shutdown happened. And I came back, and that Monday we were testing out work from home. And now it's been a few months since that happened, because things got a lot more serious. And the behaviors had to change dramatically, because we were used to using pen and paper and handing that pen and paper to another person. So we very quickly realized we had to change, because it simply wouldn't work from home. And so very fortunate in that I lead not only production teams, but also execution teams from a technology standpoint. So we really embraced the idea of digital transformation, taking things that are on pen and paper and moving them into another place, like a Salesforce, like a CRM, to make sure that you're able to digitize your workflow. And that's been a huge win over the last few months. We have found ways, well, even though people are at home, even though they have 1 or 2 monitors instead of the 3 at the office, we're able to do more, because we very, very quickly realized back in March and April, we had to change everything about what we did. And there was apprehension at first. There was a lot of concern, like there is, because change is difficult for folks. But once people realize it's for the best, and when you paint the picture of what it can look like when we're building a better future for ourselves and for our teammates and for our partners, people get on board. They might be a little apprehensive at first. And what we've found is that in doing so, we have increased our productivity significantly since COVID started.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I want to go back to something that you said, because when you said that, you were nervous because it would cause laziness. And I think that, there are some people that do have a hard time working at home remotely, and you can inspire, you can make people feel good, you can do all the things you're talking about, but there still needs to be, I think, a high level of accountability. It still is business. You still have to do what you need, that needs to get done. And even though we are in a crisis, people still need to, yes, take care of themselves and do all of that and take care of their families, but they also need to do what they say they're going to do. And so to the people that, so how are you holding people accountable to make and what are you doing with the people, your words, who have kind of like fallen into a little bit of laziness, to kind of rise them up?
So that was challenging at first, because when we came in here, I mentioned we digitized a lot of elements of what we do, because before, when it was just pen and paper, there was no way to know how much people were doing. You could only measure the outcomes. And sometimes the outcome of widget A versus widget B might take 10 times more time.
Yeah.
And so we had to build new ways of thinking about the business. And we've gotten to the point now where data is everything in this world, and we now measure the execution and the step-by-step process of what we do. And instead of using it as a big brother tool of saying, why didn't you do this? We use it to prop out the people that are using it very successfully. People that are going above and beyond by leveraging this new technology, and by propping out those and using that positive reinforcement, others want to come along for the ride. And we're able to promote people and provide more incentives to those that are using it, and it ends up bringing the bottom up.
Yeah. When you bring the bottom up, are you, as a leader, somebody who's overseeing 27 people, you're overseeing the technology needs of 500 people. How do you get the team to hold each other accountable, and how do you use mentorship to, internal mentorship or just in general mentorship, to help the ones who are, getting it faster, to help them rise up?
So that's a great question. We have some wonderful programs in our organization that have been around for quite a while for mentorship. And so I encourage team members to utilize the tools that we have, because growth for growth's sake can and should happen for more than just your immediate position. So I encourage my team members and my leaders to look out into the resources that we have internally. We have these great tools that allow you to get an education externally, that allow you to learn through provided step-by-step self-service teachings and education courses, one-on-one interviews with executives at our company. So I make sure to encourage that with folks, and that seems to provide people that awareness and desire to get better, to want to be able to be mentored and to reach out and speak to others in different areas of the business, which leads to some people might say a challenging thing, where people learn something about another area of the company and want to go to another area of the company. And I think that's one of the most exciting things. I think that people should be allowed to grow and should be always evolving and finding what's that next best thing. And I think that's one of the great parts about mentorship and shadowing, is learning how to be the best of you can be personally, wherever that might be.
Yeah. No, I love what you're talking about. And mentorship is so important. And what I've seen for a couple of years in many companies, especially larger corporations, is that, the mentorship programs are different generations. You have somebody who is in their 60s or 70s mentored with a 20-year-old, because the 20-year-old or the 30-year-old are teaching them just as much as, both sides are teaching and mentoring each other. So I think that's great. I want to talk a little bit about you, because you've used the word inspiration a couple times. And there's a big difference, in my opinion, between motivation and inspiration. Motivation, I think, is a very short shelf life. It can get people like all pumped up, but then no place to go. Where inspiration, really, I think, those that have the skill set to be able to inspire people to be their best and plant that seed in them are so important. And so talk to me a little bit about, inspiration and versus motivation.
So yeah, this is it's interesting. I'm actually taking a course right now. I'm getting my MBA, and my first class is about leadership, and it's been putting in words a lot of things that I've just felt and tried to embrace for many years. And I think the difference between motivation and inspiration is motivation. You can motivate someone for a day, for an afternoon, for an hour, but true motivation is internal, in my opinion, and it's hard to put someone in a motivated state for a long period of time without talking about the future. And the future and the painting the picture of what could be, that is inspiration in my eyes. Inspiring people to believe of what they could become or what they could be a part of. What is 6 months or a year down the line? Inspiring to think bigger, aspirational on what they want to do. And I think that's what changes things. So it's important to, in every one-on-one, in every team meeting, kickoff, whatever it might be, to talk more about that day, week, and month, to talk about the big picture. And in my experience, that, well, it doesn't work 100% of the time. It helps to inspire people when they know that they're part of a bigger plan and they're contributing and making a difference.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, one of the things that I have found through managing people and as I work in companies is that a lot of managers sometimes, to really inspire, you got to be able to speak to somebody's custom driver. You know, what really gets that individual person out of bed, and be able to customize your speak patterns to them, to use specific words that touch upon their own specific drivers. And what I find is managers who can do that are extremely successful because they can customize what they're saying and then customize it to the individual, versus managers who run into problems who just kind of speak overly kind of generic. But I agree with you. Inspiration is like if you can uncover and the internal awareness and grow somebody's potential, I think it's great. I want to talk to you about data because you oversee the tech needs for 500 some people, and that is so. What does that mean, and what type of data are you working with?
It's a great question. So the future of so many things in life depends on data. What do you do with all the information that you have, the customers that you work with, the partners, the clients? And so what we found over the years is that there's been a lot of data out there. There's a lot of Excel sheets that you might be passing around, but how do you use it to find value, to inspire people to execute in a certain way, to make decisions faster? And so one of the things I focus on with my team is how do we integrate different data sources into the systems that our team members use. So for example, instead of spending 20 minutes deciding who to call and what to say, we can use data to serve up this person is the most logical person to call next. And here are the topics that will most likely make sense for you to talk about with them. And if you can do that right, and it's not easy, you can have much more impactful conversations. You can make sure your sales team members are spending the time effectively, and make sure that you're able to grow your business big.
Very big. But let's talk about that, because I think that's really interesting because, you know, data, I love data. You know, data, I just, I read or heard on a podcast, I can't ever remember, that Amazon now with their technology based on the way a woman buys something, they can tell if she's pregnant or not before she even conceives. So that's what I heard on a podcast or read in a book. I can't remember, but data and looking at you know, and what you're talking about is probability, right? Talking to the right people and then knowing what to, you know, what to ask and what to talk about and how to get to a sale. And so when you're looking at this type of data, how do you then pull from that and create custom trainings from that, you know, for the short / medium / long term?
So that is, frankly, it's a lot of work and trial and error, because nobody's ever done it before. And if they have, you would know about it because it would be easy. You know, people have figured out this artificial intelligence for email. That's why a lot of people use Gmail. But when it comes to unique businesses, it's a lot of trial and error. One of the most important things that, in my experience, you can do when you're tackling a new business and trying to put data in the right place is figure out what data do you need. Is it about your customers? Is it about your partners? Imagine if you could know the wall wallet share of all your partners. If you were in a grocery store and you knew that the competing grocery stores all had a 33% mix of the business, that would be very different than if one had 80%. You would do things differently. So it's a lot of trial and error, figuring out what data you want and then how to expose it, and surrounding yourself with great people that are smart and intelligent and know how to take data. One of the most important roles out there in data technology these days are data scientists and people that are really smart, way smarter than me. They can figure out how to put this data to use. You don't always have to go to that level of sophistication to make a meaningful difference. If you simply have a website, for example, you know someone that visits your website twice in a day is probably a little more interested than someone that visits once a day. And finding ways to put that information in front of your partners, in front of your customers, in front of your team members can make the difference. And I guess I'd go back and say in all that, you can't do any of this with Excel. So investing in your company and your business, I think, has been very important to us. And it took me a while to realize spending a little bit more will vastly pay off in dividends in the future if you do it right.
No, I agree. I mean, I love what you're talking about, investing in your business. I think a lot of times people look at things and say, oh, that's expensive, that's an expense. But an investment goes a long, long way. But I want to talk to you a little bit about just this data and tie it back to the salespeople that are actually using the data to grow their business, grow their sales, grow their companies. At the end of the day, the bottom line. Studies show that role playing increases sales conversions 50%. You can actually double your business just by role playing. And so you have all this data, and you take these data to, in your case, your 27 people that are doing sales. Are you role playing with them? And then what type of environment do you set up so they can ask for help? Because one of the things I see with many salespeople, specifically people in general, but specifically salespeople, is they don't ask for help enough, where they get stuck in the nuances of the sales continuum.
That is huge. Role playing is one of my all-time favorite things to do in a sales world. It is. I got this guy. That's it. That's how it starts. I got this guy.
Yeah.
And you talk it through and you play it out and you understand how to do that. And with my team directly, because my team is a sales operations team that supports the 500 plus salespeople. I work with the sales leaders and we talk together about finding the best methods to instill role playing. And I think it's changed a lot, because growing up in the mortgage business, we would spend a lot of time role playing next to each other. You'd turn your seats and you'd say, hey, I got this guy. And you'd role play it out and you'd spend a couple of minutes. And I think in this COVID world, and I think in the future, we're gonna have to find new ways of doing that. And those are things I'm actually technology to stay on the forefront. I'm looking into ways that you can implement this digitally. So you can say, hey, I got this guy with your neighbor very quickly. And you can put out these scenarios to your team and have them record these tools called sales enablement and sales engagement tools that allow you to coach and role play virtually are very different, because it has been a challenge in these COVID world.
Yeah, I love it. I want to go back to just on the sales topic. I want to kind of go back to talking about habits, because right now I think the habits of salespeople is very, very critical. Consistency, resilience, being able to ask for help. The playbook has evolved since COVID hit, because I think you have to be much more focused and just in the game versus on the sidelines. And so what are some of the habits that you are leading your team with that you think are really, just what you're seeing as solid habits as they run their day?
Well, it's a great question. I think one really important piece of that is to be in the moment. Be in the moment so that when you are working on whatever thing that is, you're calling a customer, you're working on a case, whatever it is, be in the moment and give it your all.
Yeah.
In my years of experience, and this holds true in COVID world, there are times when you go through and you audit what your team members are doing, and there was someone to call back, for example, and there was 2 phone numbers and only 1 phone number was called. As a sales leader, most people have experienced things like this, and it's odd because it goes against what you would think. A salesperson is always going to want to do all the things, but there's a baked-in level of fear sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are scared to get that person on the phone, so they call the number that maybe they know is not going to be answered. So how do you make sure folks are in the moment, they're being as effective as possible, and then planning your week.
But I just want to go back for 1 second, because that fear is that narrative that many salespeople say in their head is very, very real. And so you got it. That's where you got to reach out to leaders like you know, and say, hey, this is what's going on in my head. Because once a salesperson can get over, I'm going to say in this example, and it may not be fitting, but just in general, the next 2 calls, the next 2 messages, the next 3 no's, you'll get over that fear hump. And then you realize it was just the narrative you were telling in your head. So I've been in sales a long, long time. I was actually on the phone with a client this morning, and someone said to me, did anybody ever tell you never to call them back? Because I was tenacious with follow-up. And I said, no, nobody ever did. So so all the salespeople out there, you got to surrender and go to leaders like you, in this case, Michael, you, to just kind of put your fear out on the table and then work through it. Otherwise, you'll stay complacent forever.
That's so true. But, you know, this fear, like we said, is very real. And so as a leader, less so in my current role, since my team is not sales proper these days, it's sales operations. But I think one of the most important things as a leader that you can do in those examples is get on the phone.
Yeah.
Get on the phone and show them that it's not as scary. Make those dials. Get beat up on the call maybe. Getting beat up on the phone is almost as valuable as having a win, because you show people that if it's a win, you show them the success they could have. And if you get beat up on the phone, you show that team member that getting beat up is not that bad of a thing. Yeah. Losing is okay because it's just one more no before the next yes. Yeah. And that's so important.
Yeah. Let's talk about operations for a minute. The importance of operations. I mean, it's I'm going to let you define it and talk about kind of what it is on a day-to-day basis, because it's critical to make everything, you know, work.
Sure. Yeah. So you can define it in a lot of different ways, but the way I would see it is the business processes that happen to ensure that the front end salespeople, that they can deliver what they say they're going to deliver. And it encompasses so many different things. And I like to listen or think back to one of our company's isms, which are isms are a foundation of our culture, these 19 sayings that we have. And one of them is the inches we need are everywhere around us. And it's a philosophical belief that you can find so much improvement in these tiny little things. The things that you think today are just a couple of seconds. For example, as a salesperson, keeping people on the phone in sales is very important, or keeping people in operations involved in whatever widget it is. But as soon as they get off the phone, people will spend 30 seconds, 90 seconds waiting until they get to the next thing. So if you can operationally find a way to make it so that people are back on the phone faster, how much more time do you get back over the course of a day, especially over the course of with a lot of people? How do you turn these processes to deliver whatever widget you're selling? For us, a mortgage, how do you get it out faster back to the person? I'll give you a really specific example. Our approval process used to involve, many years ago, faxing out paper. People would sign and fax back. And then it became digital, but there were still documents they had to supply, and there were still checklists made out of paper. And as we iterate and find those inches that are everywhere around us, we've gotten to the point where it used to take 45 days to go from application to approval, can now be done in, on average, 8 hours. And that's what operations is about. It's finding a way to deliver that thing better and faster and more efficiently than ever before.
I love it. 2 comments on that. One, any given Sunday, Al Pacino's talk on the inch,
Yeah.
It's my favorite. I think I've watched it probably over, 100 times, maybe 200. And next, I love what you're talking about as far as just kind of looking at everything in time. I think time is so critical, because we all have 24 hours in a day. So how we become master students of our calendar, master students of our processes and systems to save the minutes. I mean, if we save 4 minutes a day, then that's 24 hours a year. You times that by multiple hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people at a company like yours, it's no wonder why some companies can work 5 years in 1 year, because you become so efficient with your time. So I love that. So I want to touch about leadership today. So, leadership, it seems like we're going to be working remotely for a while. What is leadership today?
It's a lot of things. Leadership is making your team members feel good, to feel confident that they can do what they need to do every day, to feel confident that they have a position moving forward, to really make people feel good, to make people want to stay, to make people want to continue to deliver, to inspire them. That is what leadership is about. And leadership is also about being a great decision maker, being able to be trusted to make decisions. If you can't make decisions confidently and trustworthy based on your leaders and leaders above you, that's a problem. And so making sure that you're inspiring the people, that you're leading them effectively, that you're finding new ways to challenge them and to take bring the bar higher, and also to communicate on such a level that people don't feel lost at home, which is very easy to do in this world. So if you're only calling your people once a week, call them once a day. If you're only calling them, use video conferencing. If you're only video conferencing, use Facebook Live or use some other tools to engage them in multiple areas. Yeah. If you're only communicating during the work week, communicate on the weekend every once in a while, just to say something interesting or inspiring the weekend to make them fired up for the next week. So leadership is a lot of things, but it's ultimately being a great decision maker that is trusted and someone that can inspire people to want to be there and do more and do it better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm gonna add on to that a couple of things, just in maybe words that, different words, but same thing. Making people feel like they matter, which is what you're saying. I think that's critical, especially today, that they're a piece of the greater element of everything. Effective communication, empathy, gratitude, all of the things you're saying, I think are critical. Michael, so my last couple questions for you. So, you have worked hard, your whole life. I've known you forever. And so, legit forever. And so, there's a lot of kids graduating college today who it's a different world than they thought back in February. So what advice would you give somebody graduating college?
Wow, that's a lot. Advice to give someone in college? Know that whatever you think is the most important thing right now is probably not. Know that whatever choice you make today, as long as it's not a really bad choice, is probably going to be able to be changed in the future. So you can afford to make a difference and know that you can pivot later. But I would say look to what you find passion in and find a way to make that a career.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about something, it doesn't feel like work every day. I'm very fortunate that in what I do every day, I'm very passionate about it. I didn't know that walking in 15 years ago, but it's become a thing. And if you are sitting in a job, and I say job intentionally, for a period of time and you're not passionate about it, move on, find a career, find something you can invest your life and your time in, because once you do, it no longer becomes a job, it becomes just part of life and your career.
Yeah. And I would add on to that too, that sometimes, something that your people are really good at, that you're uniquely good at, that comes easily to you. Many people think, well, that can't become a business, but it actually can. And so sometimes don't lose sight of the obvious of what you're really great at, that you can turn into a business or bring some great value to a company. All right, Michael, last couple questions. Recent favorite book, or just favorite book in general, and why?
So I'm going to give you a recent one I'm reading right now called Extreme Ownership.
It's great. It's great.
Great book. You can make a difference in everything you do. If something doesn't go the way you want it to, think about what you could have done differently first.
Yeah.
The second book, I'll give you a twofer, is Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh, it's the best.
Life is about change, and change is always a great thing as long as you believe it is. If you believe it, you will see it.
So, Michael, I had Jacob and Aria read those books. I gave them a list of a stack of books. That was the first one I had them read when COVID hit. And I had them read it and write me a one-page report. I mean, I gave them money. I paid them to do it. But it's still, but I still, because I thought it was I would say it's such, especially right now, it is such an important book to read, because we've got to change, we've got to adapt, and we've got to evolve. Well, Michael, I'm very proud of you and what you've accomplished and what you do and the leadership that you are providing you and your team. and tell everybody how they can get a hold of you if they want to connect with you.
Sure, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or you can email me directly at berrism@gmail.com.
All right. Thanks, Michael. That was fun.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right.
Have a great day, everybody.
Take it easy, Michael. Michael, hold